Hello everyone, I'm Mark Suxford and I want to welcome you all to my new podcast called People Behind Brands, brought to you by Making Websites Better. Throughout the series, I'll be opening up my little black book of contacts where I'll be joined by an inspirational guest from the world of business, getting to the bottom of what made them so successful. In each episode, I'll be touching upon the highs and the lows that every professional has faced along the way. To never miss an episode, subscribe to our exclusive content now and follow us on our social media platforms. People Behind Brands. Life lessons from the world of business. Well, would you Adam and Eve it? We've reached episode 10 of the People Behind Brands podcast, and for this one, I've managed to drag in a silver fox. No, it's not George Clooney. Instead, we've got the next best thing. This is a man who's pioneered what he does in his craft, an industry award winner, and all-round nice guy. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you Mr. Alex Minchin of Zest Digital. Alex, thanks for joining us on People Behind Brands. How are you and where can we find you today?
I'm really good, thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me. I'm just on the edge of the Cotswolds today at my house.
Excellent. So Alex is a passionate and genuine nice guy. Alex is the unofficial silver fox of the digital world. He's also the managing director of Zest Digital. Zest is an award-winning growth marketing agency operating a hybrid model between Oxford, Birmingham and London. Zest uses proprietary frameworks and a test-based approach to help B2B organisations to build predictable revenue growth through online channels. I'm sure Alex will come on to more about Zest later, but first, let's find out more about the man behind the brand. So, first question, Alex. What made you want to take a leap of faith and become a business owner all those years ago?
Yeah, cheers, Mark. So I will happily take that title, by the way, unofficially. So in terms of taking the leap, I think for me, I kind of fell into the world of digital really early. My dad brought home a computer when I was like age 12, and I kind of spent most of my free time in and around sort of sport and school playing on that computer. I started building websites really young, just around sort of hobbies and interests, and then sort of subsequently fell into learning how to monetize those websites through advertising and affiliate marketing. I was just kind of absorbing everything at the time. So kind of not deliberately inadvertently, I kind of fell into sort of the business world at the same time because I didn't know it at that point, but I was kind of building a little business. I'd build websites, I'd do 6 months of income to increase the value of that website, and then I would sell them online to people for their own portfolios. And then I kind of did that for a long time. I went traveling. I didn't need a job because I had a portfolio of websites that kind of supported me. I went to uni without needing a job. Although I did have kind of a waitering job as well on the side, to be honest, for the tips, which were really good at that time. And then out of that, I came out of uni and went to start my own SEO business, and very quickly failed actually, because whilst I knew what I was doing in terms of my specialist area, I didn't know things like invoicing. I didn't know what taxes were. Not really. I didn't know how to win new business. I was kind of relying on friends, family, and contacts. So then after that, I went to join an agency, and very quickly kind of went on to lead a small team. My manager at the time was really helpful to me and taught me a lot, but sort of had plans of his own. So he kind of left to South Africa, which means I sort of took it on maybe a little bit earlier than I should have, but at the same time, it was a really great experience for me. And as part of that role, I was pulled into more of the sales side of things and the business decisions or the business conversations outside of my actual expertise. And what that did was just give me all the tools I needed to be able to sort of give it another shot. And I never lost that. I never kind of lost sight of wanting to do my own thing. And I remember having a conversation with my boss at the time and just saying, look, I've got all these plans. Can we do this? Can we do that? And he just said, like, we have to wait. He was like, we have to wait 6 months. Yeah, it's not going to happen this quickly. And I think at that point we sort of looked at each other and sort of knew, and we got on really well.
Yeah.
But it just wasn't kind of quick enough for me. So it was very typical how I fell into Zest. I started Zest at 23, and it was very much the typical story of, I think I can do it better, and I want to do it my way. And that's how we started.
Yeah, it sort of sounds like, from what you're saying there, it's kind of like a bit of a Swiss Army knife approach, really, where you're doing the websites, the sort of the marketing, but also the sales side of it as well. So yeah, it's quite an interesting story that I'm sure we'll come on to. So you've obviously just completed 11 years since founding Zest in the last few days. So just talk to us a bit more about the story and where the company finds itself today.
Yeah, so I mean, I can't believe it's been 11 years. It still does feel like, you kind of go through the startup stage, and then it still feels like, we're a young business. In terms of sort of the story, I started Zest as sort of continuing from the last question, was starting it as an SEO business, and then sort of quickly falling into web development, because, as you well know, we can't do SEO without a decent website. And the companies I was speaking to were very much sort of startups and very, micro businesses, small businesses at the time. And a lot of them had really quite, crappy websites, to be honest. So I had to do the website in order to do the SEO side of things. So we grew really quickly, I suppose culminating in an award for being a fastest growth agency in 2014 at the Wirehive Awards. I sort of realised at that point we were cheap, to be honest. We were winning everything, and whilst it was good and it was fun, years on, I now know that's because we were very cheap and very affordable. Over that period of time, we kind of explored various other digital channels, so PPC and social media and things like that. So I would say the first few years were very much extremely fun. They were very much carefree, and I think we were kind of finding ourselves as a business a little bit. It didn't really matter what we did. It kind of worked. Our cost base was low, and then if something didn't work, we had time to figure that out. I think things became probably more serious around 2016, 2017. More people, more responsibilities, bigger clients, more demanding clients. Those kind of challenges started to come up, and I think they started to show some cracks that I wasn't used to. So you had to deal with things like buying out shareholders or losing key team members, or into team relationships, whether that's kind of the good type of relationships or the kind of toxic ones and things like that. So later on down the line, those challenges did hit, and you kind of get forced into different avenues, really.
The digital industry, it can be often quite complex, especially with many firms promising the earth and obviously delivering not quite a great deal, really. So what would you say is your USP, or what would you say makes Zest different and able to generate those important results for your clients?
Yeah, so I think really, over the last at least 2 years, because of that frustration for me, like there's a couple of things that really stood out personally for me and for Zest, and that's, we need to stand aside from those typical agencies. I don't want to be known as an SEO agency or a PPC agency. There are 10 a penny of those, and that becomes a race to the bottom. That becomes, I know from my sort of past experience of being that sort of cheap and cheerful agency that it is a race to the bottom ultimately. So the last couple of years, we've really focused on differentiating ourselves and sort of creating a bit of a moat around what we do and what others do. So that's really revolved around building sort of frameworks around our processes, and literally building out tools and exercises that we work through with clients, to help build a growth system for them. So they get to be a part of the work that we do, which takes out that transparency issue. It's not us and them, it's we're working as part of their business to build predictable growth. And that means that you have to then liaise with more than just the marketing side. So we're not looking at, keywords and how much traffic we can generate. Of course, that's a part of it, but we have to look at things like, higher value metrics or higher level metrics like revenue per visit, customer acquisition cost per lead. We have to look at the full life cycle. So we have to look at what happens beyond a conversion on the website. What does the sales cycle look like? Who is the customer? What's the messaging that needs to go into the advertising of the website or all marketing communications? So we kind of bury ourselves a bit deeper into the business now than we used to. And I think that's a USP that's starting to serve us well because we are different. And if people can see and get involved in the work that they're doing, so far we've had really good feedback that they feel part of it and therefore they invest more heavily into it.
So as you know from listening to our previous episodes, the aim of this podcast is to also focus on the more testing times that we all go through at some point along the way, both personally and professionally. So from a personal point of view, what have been some of the setbacks that have impacted you?
Yeah, so I'll give you one story from sort of 2017 because obviously preparing for this interview, I had to kind of think about a long period of time.
Yeah.
And I found something really interesting that that I've never really I haven't mentioned to anyone, to be honest. So I found in 2017 I wrote an open letter to myself, which was quite interesting because I've got it on Evernote. And I was kind of like searching through stuff just in my work folder or notebook, sorry. And I stumbled across it. And it was really interesting because, at that point, I must have been like literally at boiling point with the stuff that I had on. And what that letter kind of deals with is over 100-day period, I had to deal with a maternity leave announcement of quite a key team member, a paternity leave at the same time, 2 team members leaving for new roles and new jobs, 2 unpredictable client losses. And they were big clients. One was an insolvency and one was a buyout, which hit us hard. My business partner at that time also moved on to a new challenge, and that was really difficult. He basically, his dad invited him to take over the family business, and he felt obliged to do that.
Yeah.
I was also going through a shareholder buyout. I had 4 weddings, 3 of which were in another country that we had to I had to go to and deal with, and one of them I was best man for, so I had to prepare the speech and just other responsibilities. And I remember thinking back, I came home one day and I remember at our first house, we had a Victorian terrace. You go in, there's a porch. So I came in through the door and I just buried my head into the coats that were hanging up. And I just literally screamed, just kind of let it all out because I was just at the point of how much more can something throw at me? How much more can I take on or be expected to take on? And I remember doing that, and that was actually really that almost validated the situation I was in, I guess. My partner was really good, Becky. She was obviously made sure I'm okay, and we went through all the things I am managing. And I think just doing that allowed me to create this, this kind of open letter approach. Really, I just listed everything down that I had to deal with, and I'd say that's a really good bit of advice. Is just when in those moments where you're right at boiling point, just literally write absolutely everything on your mind down.
Yeah,
and then you can prioritize it. I did that, and I know retrospectively, I know that was the best thing I could have done. Is just emotionally acknowledge that I can't take on anymore physically, mentally, and I think that's probably the toughest moment in my time. And I would just say also that there were the upsides of those things happening. So yes, I got to see all of the weddings and enjoy those. I was best man for one of my best friends. My business partner, I'm still very, very good friends, like best friends with. He's going to be best man at my wedding. I'm godfather to his daughter with my partner Becky. So, out of all of those things, the shareholder buyout, the shareholder that we bought out, I'm still friends with. There are all these kind of things that happen, but actually in the end, I look back on them and it's like, well, they none of them ended badly.
Yeah, I think a lot of those things though, they all sort of come together in your head, and then it's like you say, you go into the coats and you're screaming and you're like, how the hell do I deal with this? But I suppose that's a really good way of doing it and trying to sort of essentially tick off that list, that's all the bits and pieces that are on there. So yeah, I think that's a really great idea. And obviously, if anyone's listening to this, I think if you've got things that you need to do, obviously just go make a list, do what Alex has done, and tick it all off.
That's it. I think the scream was just like that was like that was just instinctive. That was like emotion just getting the better of me, and just like I just sort of crushing into the coats to muffle it. But whatever that was, I do think, looking back, I think that worked. I just needed to get that out.
Yeah, I think that's all human though, isn't it? I think, at some point along the way, things always get on top of us. And it's how we sort of deal with that is what makes us who we are, I suppose. But like all business owners, there's always been struggles here and there. So, I mean, one of them being the pandemic, which was obviously very hard on the majority of companies in the UK. So how would you say, multiple lockdowns affected you personally?
I mean, I think obviously they affect everyone in many ways. I think for us, we're very lucky in the position that we're in. We've got a big garden, we've got space, we live in a village out in the open, so there's lots of countryside that we could escape to. Those things are benefits. I think the main ones for me were the fact that we had moved house the year before in 2019, and we kind of had a substantial upsize in our last home, and we had dreams of kind of having a wedding here and running a separate hospitality business as a 2-bed cottage at the end of the garden, which when we bought it was a massive stretch for us. It was kind of like we're skipping the middle house and going kind of to the end game a little bit, and managing that process was stressful enough. But then once you get it up and running, and then lockdown hit, and I remember kind of my partner was, one of the first to get furloughed. She was she's in the beauty industry, so she managed sort of key accounts, and did a lot of sort of face-to-face sales and training and things like that for hotels and spas. So being in the beauty industry, in a face-to-face environment, in hotels and spas, was just like instant cut off. And she was put onto furlough literally pretty much day one. And our cottage at the time was obviously shut down at the same time as part of that lockdown, which meant we didn't have that kind of other income coming in. So everything kind of hinged on Zest a little bit, which I think because I've had, I'm long in the tooth in many ways in terms of how long I've been in business. I kind of took it quite well. But I do remember that I felt vulnerable, and not for any other reason than it made me realize how reliant that we are on clients.
Yeah.
So we were lucky in the sense that we didn't have clients really in the hospitality industry or, those industries that were hit hard. We didn't have much concentration within those sectors. But what we did have was we are reliant on clients. So I remember just waiting, every day for me was just waiting for phone calls. And if I didn't get a phone call, that was a really good day. If I got a phone call, it was like cross my fingers and hope that that's not a client asking to pause, or to cancel, or to do all these other things.
But during that time, you see more of your family because you was all at home and stuff like that, and you sort of see that struggles. You sort of see it firsthand, I suppose. But family is always a big part of many people's drive to succeed. So, talk to us about some of the relationships you have with your family. Obviously, with Bex there as well, and how they've supported you on your journey.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a really strong family, very family orientated, lots of support around me, which is, which is great. My parents are still together. I'm close with my sister, so for me that was really, really important. And I think also for Bex that was hugely important because Becky's mum lives in Cyprus, so she, and still to today, she hasn't seen her mum in a year and a half or whatever it is. So that's incredibly isolating, and then I kind of have to also absorb some of that for her. So my family have played a really big role in sort of helping us through it, and have always played an important role in supporting me. One thing I would say is my family aren't what I would consider risk takers.
Yeah.
They're very safe, not to the point of like being risk adverse, but just kind of they sit very central, like on the central line, for want of a better phrase. And so I kind of buck the trend there a little bit, and I think sometimes that's where I can feel isolated because I don't really have someone who jumps onto an idea, or that can necessarily see what I'm seeing quick enough, so I can't have that conversation. So that's where I've kind of used mentors and coaches over the years to fill those gaps, and I think that's important. I think you can have a really strong family around you, but you can't rely on them too much to fill things that they can't fill.
Yeah.
You can't expect too much of them because I think that's you can, if you have those expectations and they're continuously sort of not matching yours, then that's where the friction is going to happen. Whereas I know my family are really, really strong for kind of mental, emotional support, and just being in a fun and happy environment. So that's where I, when I see my family, I try as much as possible to kind of touch on work, but also I know where the separation is.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the key, isn't it? It's that sort of life work balance in a way, I suppose. But yeah, so away from the world of work and what you like to get up to in your personal time. So have you got any hobbies or interests that fulfill your time away from the world of work?
Yeah, so I love barbecuing. I've been into barbecuing like quite seriously, I'd say, for about 4 years, and I just absolutely love it. I've got 4 or 5 barbecues, and different types that I try and make an effort to get on, especially when the weather's like it is now.
You must get very bored in the winter then when it's not very sunny.
I barbecue all seasons. Yeah, I'm out there any weather really. So it's actually nice doing winter barbecues, by the way, because it's like being around a campfire.
Yeah.
You can kind of it sounds a lot worse than it is when people say, oh, like winter barbecuing, but actually when you do it, it's a really nice kind of thing for the mind.
Yeah.
And then through lockdown, I got into gardening, making myself go out into the garden. And because we are having our wedding at our house and we've done a lot of work on the garden and the house itself, I've kind of jumped 2 feet into gardening over the last 12 to 18 months. So becoming way like old before my time, but I'm really enjoying it. And I really enjoy those 2 things because they take me away from a screen. They take me away from sort of digital and that side of things. I do quite a bit of trading, and I have done for many years, but I'm kind of, I guess, a bit more aggressively now, or more sort of frequent trading over the past 2 years or so. And I think that's great, and I really enjoy it. But at the same time, I am on a screen, and so those other 2 things really help me to balance it out. I just love being outdoors when the weather's good. Just no phone, no computer to worry about. I just do what I'm doing at the moment.
Yeah. So you spoke earlier about the sort of the achievement side and things like that, with obviously business awards and stuff like that. But whether it from a business point of view or as an individual, what are you most proud of, and what would you say are the big plans for the future for you, either professionally or personally?
Yeah, Massive question. So I think I've been fortunate enough to be involved in awards or winning them, or kind of being in a finalist position for a few, and they're great. But a lot of the time I kind of see it as, yes, I'm the one up there, but or kind of in the spotlight, in many ways. But actually, it's a team effort. It really is a team effort, and I think those professionally are really important to me. But at the same time, shiny awards or even just being nominated or anything like that, they're great. But I park them to one side sometimes, because for me, the things I'm most proud of are getting through moments where, like, you have to show huge amounts of resilience. And like the moment, the kind of open letter that I mentioned earlier, looking back, those are my proudest moments. Lockdowns, like things like that, where you get, I think in business, and we all do, we get, all careers, we get tested with lots and lots and lots of pressure moments. And I think when I actually look back, they're the bits that I'm most proud of, because I know they're with me for a lifetime now. The ability to, when something goes wrong, the ability to look back on experience and like, okay, well, how do I get past that? Well, it can't be as bad as when. I think that's more important to me personally. In terms of like big plans for the future, I think I can't give too much away, because we do have some good plans that aren't sort of fully fleshed out yet. But I would say, for me, I'm less involved in the business at the moment, which is a great thing, and it's kind of, it is the point of building a business in many ways. But at the same time, it's what happens after that.
Yeah.
And I struggled a little bit with doing myself out of a job and not really having a clear plan on what's on the other side for me. Not to be absolutely out of Zest. I love Zest, but at the same time, I don't want to be treading on toes. And I need to kind of know when to get involved and when not to. So there's some big plans around that. I think Zest-wise, we're very much focused on taking a new journey with kind of the whole growth marketing side of things, and focusing on kind of differentiating ourselves away from bog standard agencies, or kind of standard service agencies that we're trying to just peel away from a little bit. So that's quite interesting to me, and it's a good challenge. And then looking into ways that we can grow that as well. And I think personally, so we were also really lucky, because me and Becky got engaged in 2018, and our plan was to get married in 2020. We ended up buying this house in 2019, which put the brakes on the wedding side of things, which we were hoping to get married in. We were thinking about the garden, then we were thinking about Italy. Becky's family's Italian, and we kind of we were just really lucky that we didn't actually do it in time, because that we would have lost out, like so many other people. We would have just been hammered by COVID, and so we've pushed that back, and and we kind of thought about 2021, but ultimately we were like, we just don't want to stress about it. So 2022, this time next year is when we're hoping to get married. So that's part of the big plans. And I think personally, I think thinking about sort of what happens next family wise and all those things will come at me, and they're likely to be bigger challenges than you can ever experience professionally.
Yeah. No, that all sounds really good. Obviously, best of luck with that as well. So, if there's obviously one life lesson you could give to your younger self, or someone starting out and wanting to benefit from your knowledge and experience, what would it be? Obviously, you might say the list there as well. You might want to put the list in. But if there was anything else, what would you say?
Yeah, I think. I think one thing that's really served me well is just thinking about your life in decades. I think if you think about your life in years, it can be really difficult to keep a bigger perspective on things, and you're trying to be too planned. And whilst I've done that, and I do kind of personal goal setting and all of the other things that we're told to do, like everyone else. But you can lose track, you can kind of feel like you haven't achieved what you wanted to achieve in a year, or something else comes up. So for me, one thing that's been really great is looking at your life in chapters. And it doesn't have to be decades, it just has to be chapters. I do mine in decades. So for me, my 20s was really about kind of finding what it is I wanted to do and just get involved and get stuck in. 30s is really about sort of refining that, and only doing the things that I want to do or like to do. My 40s is very much about kind of maximizing that. When I come to that period of my life, I want to be able to sort of really give it a good go, and then beyond. So for me, I'd like to be in a position where I can kind of step back a little bit in my 50s. So I need to plan for that. And I think breaking your life into decades just allows you gives you a little bit of slack. We're not machines. We're not perfect. It's a journey, and it's as much about enjoying the journey as it is about thinking about the goals that you want to achieve. It's the process of how you get there. That's important. And I think just expanding your view on, how you break your goals down or your life into chapters just gives you a bit more space to play in.
Yeah, completely agree. Alex, thanks for giving up your time to come on the podcast today. I know your schedule is manic at the moment, so having spoken obviously with your PA the other day, where would you be without her?
I really couldn't tell you.
So in all seriousness, it's been an absolute pleasure learning more about you. I'm sure many others can resonate with your life lessons from the world of business. To find out more about Zest Digital and how their team can help grow your business online, you can visit the website www.zestdigital.com or connect with Alex directly on LinkedIn to discuss your project. It's time to bid you all a fond farewell until next time. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll give you Mr. Alex Minchin.
So that's it for this episode of People Behind Brands. I'd love to hear from you all, so if you want to get in touch, follow us on our social media platforms. If you like what you heard, please rate and subscribe to our exclusive content now. Join us next time for a brand new guest on the podcast as we explore yet more life lessons from the world of business. We'll see you soon. Ta-da!